Hi, this is Matt Regier with my ePortfolio highlight video. I thought I'd start with my educational leadership philosophy. This was a kind of a formative document for me just to think through this and process the way that I lead. And I really settled on three here that are pretty meaningful to me. The first is transformational leadership. I really believe that change is constant, and that's part of the necessity of leadership. And so, as an administrator, I need to be looking for transformational leadership, for ways to continue to transform the institution I'm working for in a positive way for the benefit of kids and for the benefit of staff. I also thought servant leadership was important. My faith is important to me, my family is important to me, and I think service to them is huge. And that also carries over into my educational life. As I serve my students, as I serve the staff that I work with, that's a way that I feel like I lead effectively, and I feel like most people respond to that fairly well. And then democratic leadership reflects a process that was really formative for me as an educator. We went through a redesign project several years ago at my school where we were able to rethink school. And that really was a democratic process. Our principal led from the back of the room in many cases and allowed the teachers to make those decisions. And it's really influenced me to believe that in many cases, the expert is actually in the room already. We don't need to bring someone in from the outside to teach us how to do things. If we give the voice to the teachers, if we give the voice to the democratic process, oftentimes those answers are already available in the room. So again, this was a great exercise for me to talk about leadership and the way that I lead best, and then to think about how I might practice that as a school administrator. The other candidate info contents here, my artifact folder is available here. I've got my artifacts separated into three different folders, my slideshows, and all the other necessary options there. My goals video is also available here. It's posted on YouTube. That was kind of a fun activity for me to go through to think about the different things that I want to do over the next year, 5 years, 10 years. A big one there was to maintain great relationships with my wife and kids. I think that's really important as I move into administration, that I continue to prioritize family and also continue to prioritize some personal goals, some things that I want to be sure that I'm able to accomplish outside of my professional life. So there's several here that have to do with moving to a family farm and fixing up an older house there, and also spending time and energy and investing in my wife and in my kids. My plan of study is here. This was something that was a bit of a challenge for me as it loads. I started this program in October of 2020, so I moved through this fairly quickly, which has been a great benefit of Fort Hays State for me, because I actually have a job now as an administrator moving into next year, and was able to move through that fairly quickly. But my options for artifacts were fairly limited because this was done in the space of about 18 to 20 months. So I really enjoyed the flexibility of Fort Hays State and the pace with which I was able to move, but it did make my ePortfolio a bit more challenging. And then my resume is also attached here. I did not use one of the Fort Hays State templates because I had already gone through and created this for the job that I was applying for, but it is complete and it does check all of the necessary boxes there as far as a resume. Moving on to my activities, the annotated bibliography. I won't read through all of these, of course, but this was something that I really thought was kind of going to be a hoop that I would have to jump through, and that I would really dread it and hate it. It wasn't quite as bad as I thought it would be, as far as the value that I got out of this. I did go through all 33 articles, of course, but reading these really helped me to reflect and to think about each standard a little bit more deeply, and then to consider how I might want to use that sort of a process as a future administrator. My activity log form and spreadsheet is here. I will scroll down to the spreadsheet there. I did go ahead and complete every component as required. So I filled in every component there, and I'll just quickly scroll through there because there will be other opportunities to see that. My component tracker is here, and again, I've checked every box there that is necessary. So I have the 5 district activities, 7 in the elementary activities, and I believe I had 12 in the secondary activities to fill all of the components there. So onto the artifact slideshow. That's really the meat of this presentation. So, and I won't hit every one of these completely, but I will go through each of the slideshows. The district level activity artifacts. The first one was just analyzing decisions in terms of established ethical frameworks. So I used my decision-making process infographic from EDL 852, Module 8. I thought this was a pretty good fit for that standard and for that activity because it does show how I analyze activities with an ethical framework. The second one was developing school policies or procedures that cultivate equitable, inclusive, and culturally responsive practices amongst teachers and staff. And I thought preventing special education teacher liability from EDL 853 Module 7 was a good fit here. Again, cultivating equitable and inclusive cultures amongst staff. And this is something that I could easily share with teachers, post in a teacher's lounge, or just provide digitally to teachers. This was one of the tools that I thought was maybe most helpful and relevant moving forward. Third one is something that I did for most of the fall here. The school leader will cultivate regular two-way communication with community members, partners, and other constituencies. So this fall, I took it upon myself as the athletic director for our small school to create a weekly calendar with all district events, and then also a wellness center calendar. And this particular week, I had some high school events. I believe it had a middle school event or two. It had a Sports in Kansas Think Before You Post presentation that included all students 5 through 12 for our district. And it also was shared with our community so that they knew when our district wellness center would be open. This also turned into some social media proctoring for me. So I was able to respond to questions and comments from different patrons. There were multiple Facebook messages each week, questions about game times or where do I get a yearbook, different things like that. So this was a fairly regular process for me, and it definitely fostered some two-way communication with a variety of stakeholders, not just high school parents, but some grandparents, some parents of younger students that had questions about our district and about the activities. For Standard 6, the school leader will analyze how law and policy are applied consistently, fairly, equitably, and ethically within a school. I chose my special education disciplinary flowchart. This was a really, really informative piece for me, and it was something that I've gone back and reviewed again as I've dealt with a couple of special education cases this year at school. I've not necessarily been the disciplinarian, but evaluating whether my principal handled it correctly and reflecting back on that, I felt like this was an assignment that was totally new for me. And so learning a little bit about how this works really does apply to how law and policy are applied consistently, fairly, equitably, and ethically within a school to still provide that student with a free and appropriate public education. And then finally, for my district activities was my KEEP evaluations. I have provided teaching staff with actionable feedback to support improvement. This was a great opportunity for me to actually evaluate another teacher. And that's not something that we get to do in our own districts very often because there's certainly some liability tied to that and some discomfort. But the opportunity to observe a teacher through Fort Hays State through this KEEP program was outstanding. It was good practice on giving actionable feedback. It was good practice on filling out that rubric and getting a feel for what observation looks like from an administrative standpoint. Moving on to my elementary level artifact slideshow. The school leader conducts an evaluation of existing mission and vision processes and statements. This artifact probably needs a little bit of explanation. I've now been included in admin meetings because I'm going to be a middle school principal within the district I'm currently working in. And that's been a huge blessing to be able to be included in those meetings prior to actually taking the job. So we watched a new hires video, but we also watched a principal of a successful school video, much of which was focused on mission and vision statements. And I followed that up with a conversation with my elementary principal about the mission and vision of her school. And much of that conversation centered around the idea that she wasn't quite sure what those were or didn't feel confident that students and staff would know them. But they did have what they call the big three, which is treat others right, make smart decisions, and maximize your potential. I really like the common language aspect of that, but we definitely agreed that a little bit more focus on some mission and vision for that school building would be helpful. Second, the school leader will model ethical practice. There's the video. I included the leadership and ethics video from EDL 852. This was really focused on ethical practice in leadership, and so I thought that was a great fit. Third, the school leader will advocate for supportive and inclusive school culture. The People First Language video from EDL 853 was, again, very impactful for me. It's something that I've reflected back upon several times as I've dealt with people with disabilities or students that need some assistance. It's really been something that's maybe consider multiple times the way that I treat those around me and the way that others treat people with disabilities. So that's been formative for me, and it's definitely something that I felt fit this standard. Fourth, the school leader interprets data from formative and summative assessments. I sat down with a first grade teacher and considered some data from their Ames Web testing. That was really helpful for me. I had not had much exposure to the Ames Web system or to how our elementary school teachers interpret data. So this was a great experience to sit down with her, and she was very gracious, explaining how data works for them and what they do, the different tiers that they put students in, how their MTSS systems work, and what they do with that. For standard 5, collaborative engagement with diverse community members, partners, and other constituencies. I've done multiple basketball camps as our high school basketball coach. The practice schedule that you see above and that is linked in my artifacts folder is from a summer camp that I've done for students. And then the bottom picture is actually before our biddy ball season this year for our younger students during the winter. I put on a free camp for any student that wanted to come. And those have been great opportunities to talk with community members, to build relationships with kids. I've had my high school players help. So that's been a huge way that I've been able to engage with a variety of community members. For standard 6, managing credit cards video from EDL 854. I'm rapidly running out of time here, so I will keep going. And standard 7, I had a chance to evaluate a middle school and elementary PE teacher. So I got the chance to sit in on an interview as an incoming principal and was able to participate fully in that. And that was a great experience and a good opportunity to evaluate applicant materials. Moving on to my secondary level artifact show, and this is where the bulk of my activities came in. The first one was to evaluate improvement processes within the school, and I just included IEP meetings because those are always an opportunity to do that. Second, for the second standard, I've done a variety of administrative tasks, whether that's participating in interviews, covering lunches, doing some disciplinary action when the principal's been out of the building. I've been in a variety of different roles there. I've been our athletic director. So I've had a chance to model those professional norms consistently, both within our school and with other administrators from other schools. Third, the school leader will cultivate ethical behavior in others. I have started in the last couple of years doing a journaling system with my basketball players pretty much every day, not quite every day. Before practice, we have a journal question. And I included one at the bottom there. What's one productive way to respond when you're wronged? What's one unproductive way? So you can see that oftentimes those do involve basketball, but many times they don't. We've asked things like, what is the most important part of a car to demonstrate how teamwork is significant and how each person has a role on the team. Sometimes it might be sort of frivolous. If you could vacation anywhere in the world, where would you go? But those are great ways to me to cultivate some ethics in my players and to talk about things that really matter outside of basketball, to talk about sportsmanship, but also to talk about how being a high character individual will impact you, not just as a basketball player, but as a young man. For standard 3, I chose my FAPE infographic from EDL 853. The school leader advocates for equitable access, and I thought FAPE qualifies there. For standard 4, I included a process by which another science teacher and I selected some new curriculum for our classes over the last couple of years. We pursued a different set of textbooks. We had to advocate for those to our board and to our curriculum director. And so that was a positive experience for us that certainly fit this standard. For component 4.2 and activity B, excuse me, I included my passion project planning. I've taken the lead on planning passion projects. Sorry, that's kind of a tongue twister. For our high school, that's been part of our redesign process, and you can see some of my notes there from some of the meetings that we've had. And then also I led a staff discussion over that in a staff meeting during one of our in-service periods. For component 4.4, I have actually been able to team teach with our life science teacher. There are only 2 science teachers at our high school. I do physical sciences, she does life sciences. And so I've been able to team teach with her, and I thought that really fit using research and evidence to propose designs and implementation strategies, because in many cases we felt like we're kind of reinventing the wheel. So we have been improving coordination and coherence among the school's curriculum, instruction, and assessment practices because we've been working together to teach. I feel like high school teachers especially can get siloed into their subject area, and this has been a way for us to try to improve that coordination and coherence. Moving towards the end here, the school leader fosters two-way communication with families. It was a little bit hard to find an actual artifact for this, but as our athletic director, I've been an event supervisor at innumerable events over the last 6 years. I put 100 hours. That's probably selling it short, to be honest, even though that's a really high number. But that's been a great way for me to foster two-way communication with our families. I can stand on the fence and talk with a dad at a softball game. I get to see people in the concession stand. I get to interact with our players and our coaches. But I've been able to be around our community so much. And while that takes a lot of time and it takes time away from my family, it's also been a great opportunity for me to have that two-way communication. And I've learned a lot about our district, about the things that we do well and the things that we don't do very well. So that's been an invaluable experience for me, just to be at those events and to interact with those people. A plan for identifying and accessing resources. I put multiple pictures on here. There's a fundraising banner on the bottom. There's officials at the top, which are a huge resource for us as an athletic department. And then the bottom picture is some of the help that I was able to arrange for one of our wrestling tournaments. And this is true for track meets and a variety of other events. But I've done a lot of identifying and accessing resources, and not all of it has to do with money. Much of it is human resources and knowing who to ask when we need help. Develop a school's master schedule. I was able to do that at our high school to some degree, but also this year for our middle school, I was integrally involved in developing the master schedule. So that fit very well. Athletic budget management. I have evaluated our resource needs for uniform replacement, for equipment. I purchase all of the athletics equipment through my athletics budget. And you can see some of my cluttered email inbox there. That's just the vendors folder. The school leader evaluates school's professional staff capacity needs. Again, one of those administrative meetings. We discussed the Kansas Educator Engagement and Retention Study from Emporia State University. We talked about a variety of staff openings that you can see down here at the bottom and how we were going to fill those, some creatively, whether we were going to not fill a position or fill a position differently, and some that we knew that we needed to fill. So that was a great opportunity to evaluate professional staff capacity needs. And I believe the final one here is to model and foster effective communication. Again, as our athletic director, I have been on the coaches meeting, and I've led that for the last several years, informing our coaches about any CASA changes or regulations that they need to be aware of. I've also done assistant coaching evaluations and head coaching evaluations for all of our coaches in conjunction with my principal, and have communicated with them about ways that they can improve and things that they're doing well. And finally, this is the last one. The school leader will utilize digital technology in ethical and appropriate ways. I thought the Why We Must All Become Digital Citizens was a great fit for that. Moving on and finishing up, my administrative verification document is here. And I got verification from my superintendent, my middle elementary principal, and high school principal. And then finally, my program reflection is here. And again, as I mentioned, I really didn't come into this with the greatest mindset, but I found a lot of value in it as I went through. And so this reflection was a healthy process for me. And then there are the reflections on each of the courses. Thank you for listening.